I watched my daughter-in-law hurl a hard-shell trunk into Sable Lake and peel off down the dirt lane like the world was on fire. For half a breath I couldn't move. Then a sound rose from the water, low, muffled, impossible. "Please don't be what I think you are," I whispered, fingers slipping over the soaked latch. I dragged the trunk to the shallows, wrenched it open, and my chest seized in a way I hadn't felt in all my 58 years. What I saw inside turned a quiet autumn afternoon into a nightmare I will carry for the rest of my life. Let me tell you how I got to that moment. I had just poured sweet tea and glanced at the old brass clock that used to sit on my mama's dresser. The hand sat between 4 and 5, 4:47 if you want to be exact. I stood on the porch of the little cedar house where I raised my only child, Jamal. Since we laid him to rest 5 months back, the rooms had started to echo, too much space, too much silence. Sable Lake shimmered beyond the pecan trees, smooth as glass, the air heavy with that sticky Gulf heat that makes a blouse cling to your back whether you move or not. That's when I saw the midnight blue sedan fishtail up the lane, coughing dust. Tiana, my son's widow, sat hunched over the wheel. The engine whined in a way that said something wasn't right. Nobody drove that lane like that unless they were running from something. She slammed to a stop at the waterline. My teacup slipped from my hand and shattered against the porch boards, but I couldn't spare a glance. Tiana flung the trunk open with a force that made the lid buck. She wore a smoke-gray dress I recognized. Jamal had given it to her for an anniversary. Her curls were wild, face blotched like she'd been crying or screaming or both. She reached into the trunk, hauled out a charcoal suitcase, heavy from the way her shoulders dipped, and scanned the shore with a guilty, twitching gaze I will never forget. "Tiana!" I called, but the lake carried my voice nowhere. She trudged to the edge, swung once, twice, and on the third swing sent that case into the water. The slap of it against the lake cracked the afternoon like thunder. Egrets lifted from the reeds. The case bobbed, then began to sink. Tiana bolted, back into the sedan, tires shrieking, dust boiling up behind her as she tore away the same way she came, leaving me with heat, silence, and a dread that crawled up my spine like ice. 10 seconds. 20. 30. My mind tried to stack what I'd seen into sense and failed. The case. The lake. The way her arms shook. Something was terribly wrong. My legs moved before my thoughts caught up. I ran. It wasn't pretty. My knees complained, and the years I like to pretend I don't feel showed up loud. I flew down the steps and across the crabgrass, sandals slapping, dust stinging my eyes. The shore wasn't far, maybe a football field, maybe less. Time stretched out like taffy. By the time I hit the waterline, my breath sawed and my heart rattled my ribs. The case still floated, half sunk, darkened to near black by the water. I didn't think. I just waded in. The lake was colder than a shadowed church, stealing my breath as it climbed from knee to thigh to waist. Mud sucked at my feet. One sandal vanished. I reached, caught a strap, and pulled. It was like dragging an anchor, or something worse I wouldn't let my brain name. I hauled harder. Water slapped my face. My arms trembled. Then the case slid toward me, grudging, and we lurched together into the shallows. That's when I heard it again, a whisper of sound from inside. My blood turned to dust. "No, no, no," I said, my hands fumbling the zipper. The teeth were sticky with grit and rust. "Come on," I begged, voice shaky, eyes blurring. Once. Twice. The seam gave with a wet rip. I lifted the lid. A baby lay inside, swaddled in a drenched powder blue blanket. So small, so still. His lips were dusky. His skin, the color of cooling wax beneath the water sheen. The cord at his belly was tied off with plain twine. No clinic clip, no sterile anything, just a knot that said somebody brought him into this world in secret. My hands trembled, so hard I nearly dropped him, but I gathered him close with a tenderness that surprised me, a muscle memory older than grief. He was cold, too light in the arms, too quiet. I pressed my ear to his chest and found only silence. I lowered my cheek to the soft rise of his nose. There, so faint I thought it was wishful thinking, a whisper of breath. He was alive. I staggered out of the water, clutching him to my blouse, and ran, barefoot now, lake grit cutting my soles, clothes dripping, fear and urgency the only engines that mattered. I burst through my front door shouting for help, maybe for God. I can't swear which. I snatched the kitchen phone with one hand while holding the baby with the other, fingers slipping, dialing by instinct. 911, what's your emergency? A baby, I sobbed. In the lake. He's so cold. He's barely, please. Ma'am, I need your address. I spat it out between shivers. Lay the baby on a flat surface, she said. I swept plates and mail off the table and eased him onto the wood. Is his chest moving? I leaned close until my breath fogged his skin. Barely. Just barely. Listen carefully, she said, steady and patient the way black women learn to be for each other. Get a clean towel, dry him off, then wrap him warm. Do not shake him. Help is coming. I ran for linens, hands clumsy, movements frantic. I patted him dry, swapped the soaked blanket for warm cotton, wrapped him snug, and gathered him back to my chest. My voice fell into some old lullaby my mama used to hum, a melody stitched with hope. Hold on, little one, I whispered. Hold on. They're coming. Sirens carved the quiet minutes later, lights flashing against the kitchen wall. 2 paramedics hurried in, a gray-bearded man and a young woman with her braids tied back. The woman lifted the baby like she'd been born doing it, listened with her stethoscope, and said, Severe hypothermia, likely water aspiration. We need to move now. They masked him with oxygen, attached wires and beeping things I didn't have names for. You're riding with us, the man said, and I didn't argue. I climbed onto the side bench and locked my gaze on that tiny face among all that equipment while the siren wailed us across town. How'd you find him? The woman asked, fingers steady, voice calm. In a case, I said. I saw someone throw it in. My tongue stumbled on the rest. Who I'd seen. The midnight blue sedan. The smoke gray dress. The woman who cried crocodile tears at my son's funeral and just pitched a baby into a lake. Did you recognize who it was? The medic asked. I opened my mouth, closed it, then forced the truth out like something sharp. Yes. At the hospital, glass doors flew wide and a tide of green and white scrubs swallowed the gurney. They wheeled the baby through double doors, voices overlapping, numbers, orders, a language of urgency. I tried to follow, but a nurse in navy scrubs blocked me with a firm hand and kinder eyes. Ma'am, you need to wait here, she said, guiding me into a room with cream walls and 2 bright lights. She was about my age with lines earned the honest way. Her badge read Patrice. Tell me everything, she said gently, tablet poised but voice human. So I did. From the first cough of dust to the last flicker of breath on my cheek, I poured it all out. She listened, no interruptions, no judgment, just the quiet efficiency of a black nurse who's seen the world do too much. When I finished, she squeezed my hand. You saved that child today, she said. Just breathe. I tried. My clothes clung cold. My teeth chattered. Shock sat in my bones like winter. Not long after, 2 officers appeared, both plainclothes. The woman in lead introduced herself as Detective Kendra Holt, eyes serious beneath a tight twist out. Her partner, younger, flipped a notebook. They asked for the makes and models and moments, the sedan color, how far away I'd been, exactly what I'd seen. Kendra's gaze was attentive, sharp without being cruel. And you're certain it was your daughter-in-law? She asked. I am, I said, throat raw. Tiana, why would she do that? The younger one asked, more to the air than to me. I don't know, I said, and it was the truest thing in the room. Grief makes ghosts of your sureties. Patrice returned with a blanket that smelled like dryer sheets and a pair of soft scrub pants and a cotton tee from the supply closet. Go change, Miss Ellison, she said. Evelyn Ellison, that's me. Folks call me Evie. We'll update you. I stared at the clock. The hands had crept to evening. Somewhere beyond those double doors, a tiny life fought for another minute and another after that. I pressed my palms together, closed my eyes, and let the prayer come even though I haven't been good at them since we lowered Jamal into the ground. A young doctor, maybe 38, dark circles carved beneath his eyes, found me an age later. For now he's stable, he said. He's in the NICU. Hypothermia and aspiration. The next 48 hours are critical, but he's got a fighting chance. Is he going to live? I asked, voice thin. I won't lie to you, he said. I don't know. We're doing everything we can. The words landed like a fragile bridge over a canyon. I stepped onto them because there was nowhere else to go. Detective Holt came back with a card and instructions about statements, about not contacting Tiana, about coming down to the precinct in the morning. She spoke clearly, carefully, like she understood that my world had slid sideways and language had to help it stand. When she left, Patrice pressed a steaming cup of coffee into my hands and sat with me in that too-bright room. "You're not alone, Miss Evie," she said. "Not tonight." I believed her, because for the first time since the lake, my breathing found a rhythm that didn't hurt. And somewhere beyond the glass, a child, our child, breathed with me. The night stretched thin and brittle. Every time a set of footsteps passed the waiting room door, my heart leapt like it wanted to outrun me. Patrice checked in on me, swapping my soaked clothes for warm scrubs, pressing a blanket over my shoulders, reminding me to sip water. I watched the ceiling vents and bargained with a god I hadn't spoken to proper since we buried Jamal. Close to dawn, a familiar presence eased into the chair beside me, Pastor Reggie Cole from our neighborhood church, a tall, cocoa-skinned man with a soft baritone and eyes that knew grief when they found it. He didn't preach. He just sat there, palms open, letting the quiet make space. When he finally spoke, it was barely above a hum. "Sometimes the only prayer is breath," he said. "Let's breathe together, Miss Evie." We did. By mid-morning, Detective Kendra Holt reappeared with a folder tucked under her arm. Her face had that careful look cops get when the facts don't line up. "Miss Ellison," she said, sliding a photo onto the table. It showed a midnight blue sedan, Tiana's make, her plates, rolling into a strip mall lot at 5:02 p.m., a market 30 blocks from my house. "That can't be," I said, heat rising into my cheeks. I saw her throw the case just before 5. "How close were you to the shoreline?" she asked. "A ways," I admitted. "Porch to waterline and back. My eyes aren't what they used to be, but I know my own family." Kendra's expression stayed gentle but firm. "We're not calling you a liar. We're saying we need every angle. If Tiana's car was here at 5:02, she couldn't be at the lake at the same time. Could someone else have been there? Different car. Similar dress. Doubt snuck in like a draft under a door you thought was sealed." I replayed the dust, the gray dress, the way the shoulders shook, the case cutting the water. "I'm sure," I said, only it came out softer than I meant. "Okay," Kendra said, jotting something down. "Either way, do not contact Tiana. We'll need a full recorded statement from you tomorrow. For now, focus on the child." The word child steadied me like a handrail. A pediatrician with silver braids, Dr. Mariah Benton, came by just before noon. "He's holding his own," she said. "We've warmed him, stabilized his breathing. We'll run a panel of tests and keep him in the NICU. First 2 days are crucial. Can I see him?" I asked, voice catching on the edge of hope. "Not yet," she said, kindly but professional. "We need to limit exposure until he's more stable." Afternoon brought Nia Carter from Child and Family Services, sharp suit, notebook in her lap, compassion softening the lines of duty on her face. "Ms. Ellison, I know today is a lot," she began, "but I have to ask a few questions." I answered them all, about living alone, my late husband's pension, my health, the small circle of folks who'd stand up for me. She nodded, making neat notes. When he's ready to be discharged, he'll need a licensed foster placement," Nia said. "Given the circumstances, you could petition for temporary kinship care, but there's a process." "What would it take?" I asked. "Background check, medical clearance, home assessment, references, and a short caregiving course," she said, counting them on steady fingers. "It can move faster when there's urgency, but it still takes time. Time. The one thing we never feel we have enough of when life is on the line." I went home after 36 hours because Patrice all but marched me to the exit. "Shower, eat, change," she ordered. "If anything shifts, we'll call." As the sun slid down the sky, I parked by Sable Lake. The police had already combed the shoreline, no case, just the memory of where it had been, and my footprints dried into the mud like proof and accusation both. I stood there, cicadas rising like static, and tried to stitch the last day into a story that didn't rip at the seams. My phone rang. "Miss Ellison, this is Patrice. We need you back. Now." I broke every posted limit on the way to the hospital and still arrived feeling late to my own life. Patrice led me into a small conference room. Waiting there, Detective Holt, Mia from Social Services, and a woman in a plum blazer with a calm, science-steady gaze. "I'm Dr. Layla Durant," she said. "Forensic genetics. We expedited a kinship analysis." The words rolled past before they landed. "A what?" "We took a buccal swab from the child and compared it to yours," Dr. Durant said, sliding a report across the table. "He shares about a quarter of his DNA with you." I stared at the lines of numbers that might as well have been a foreign language. "It means," Dr. Durant continued gently, "he's your biological grandson. Jamal's son." It hit me like the ocean, first shock, then undertow. Jamal had been gone 5 months. He never said any woman was carrying his child. Tiana had never said a thing. "That's not possible," I whispered, even as my body knew it was truer than gravity. Dr. Durant's voice stayed steady. "Based on neonatal markers, he was born approximately 2 to 4 days ago. The kinship index is conclusive." Detective Holt leaned forward. "Evie, may I call you Evie? We're also reopening your son's crash. There are discrepancies with the original report. I'm not ready to share details yet, but you need to know we're treating Jamal's death as suspicious." I gripped the edge of the table, feeling the room tilt. Grief, rage, relief, terror. Every current met in my chest. Nia cleared her throat softly. "This changes your legal standing. As the paternal grandmother, you can file for emergency kinship placement. There will still be evaluations, but the court will take your petition seriously." "Can I see him?" I asked. My voice surprised me, strong, like it had found its old spine. Patrice smiled. "Come on." She led me through scrubbed hallways and a set of heavy doors into the NICU, lights low, machines whispering, tiny lives watched over by people who move like careful angels. In the far corner, an incubator glowed. Inside, a brown-skinned baby, small but stubborn, taped lines at his hands, rise and fall like a fragile tide in his chest. "He can tolerate gentle touch," Patrice said. "Just the back of your finger." I slid my hand through the porthole and brushed the softest knuckles I've ever known. His fingers curled around the tip of mine, a reflex, they say, but it felt like a vow. "Hey there," I whispered. "It's Grandma, Evie. I've got you." Patrice rested a hand on my shoulder. "We need a name for the chart until the courts sort things out. Jamal once told me, laughing around a plate of collards at Thanksgiving, that if he ever had a boy, he'd name him after my daddy, Caleb, because old man Caleb stayed stubborn in his goodness." I felt my mouth curve before I meant it to. "Caleb," I said. "Put Caleb Ellison on that line." Patrice nodded, jotting it down. I stayed beside that incubator until the clock forgot how to move, humming the same tune Pastor Reggie had breathed with me, promising a future I didn't know how to build yet, but promising it all the same. The next few days blurred together, hospital lights, paper cups of coffee, and questions from people who all wore badges of one kind or another. Every conversation began with just a few more details, Ms. Ellison, and ended with me repeating the same story until it didn't feel like mine anymore. By the 3rd day, Detective Holt returned, a deeper furrow between her brows. "Evie," she began, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. I've told you everything I know. I know, but new evidence has raised some inconsistencies." The word inconsistencies hit like a slap. "What kind?" She placed another photo on the table. Tiana's sedan again, this time timestamped 10 minutes after I swore I saw her by the lake, parked outside a convenience store. "That's impossible," I said. "I saw her with my own eyes." Kendra's tone stayed calm but unrelenting. "How far were you from the water when you saw her throw the case?" "About 100 yards, maybe a little more." "So mostly from behind?" "In the late light." I hesitated, and that pause said too much. "I'm not accusing you," Kendra added quickly, "but grief plays tricks on memory. And with what we're learning about Jamal's accident." I stiffened. "What about his accident?" "The crash report didn't add up," she said quietly. "We sent the car for reinspection. The brakes were tampered with." My throat went dry. "Tampered?" She nodded. "Cut lines. Somebody wanted that wreck to happen." The words hung in the air like ash. Jamal hadn't just died. Someone had killed him. And I didn't need her to say the name forming in both our minds. 2 days later, Social Services summoned me again. Nia arrived with a young caseworker named Leah Simmons, polite but distant, clipboard balanced on her knees. "We're moving the baby to temporary state custody once he's medically cleared," Leah said. "He'll go to a licensed foster family until placement decisions are made." State custody? The phrase cracked my composure. "He's my grandson. You can't hand him to strangers." "I understand this is hard," Leah said evenly, "but we have to follow procedure." "What if I take him?" The words escaped before sense could stop them. Leah blinked. "You mean foster him?" "I mean raise him," I said. "He's my blood. I pulled him out of that lake with my own hands." She looked at Nia, then back to me. "You're 58, Ms. Ellison. You're not a registered foster parent, and there's an active criminal investigation involving your family. It's complicated. I didn't commit a crime." "No one's saying you did," Nia said softly, "but we still need background checks, medical and psychological evaluations, a home inspection." "I'll do whatever you ask," I cut in. "Everything. Just don't let him disappear into that system." Nia closed her notebook slowly. "I'll note your intent to apply for kinship care. We'll start the paperwork." That evening, I finally went home. The house smelled stale, like a place that hadn't exhaled in months. I showered, scrubbed the lake mud from my skin, and stared at my reflection. Tired eyes, wrinkled hands, a woman who'd lost too many people and was about to fight for one more. The phone rang again, Patrice's voice on the other end. "Evie, can you come back? The baby's condition is improving, but there's something you should hear." When I arrived, they led me to a quiet conference room where Detective Holt, Dr. Durant, Nia, and a new man in a tailored gray suit waited. He introduced himself as Attorney Marcus Vale, the hospital's legal advisor. "Ms. Ellison," he began, "the DNA results were verified by a second lab. The infant is Jamal Ellison's biological son, which makes you the next of kin." I gripped the chair until my knuckles went pale. "There's more," Kendra said. "Jamal's accident was no accident. The mechanic who worked on his car confessed, after being confronted with bank transfers traced back to Tiana Harper." Marcus slid a printed page across the table. It showed wire transfers, 2,000 here, 3,000 there. "She paid him to cut the brake lines," Kendra said. I pressed a hand to my mouth. "Lord, have mercy." "She collected the life insurance payout 6 months ago," Marcus continued. $200,000. It was moved offshore within 2 weeks. Nia's voice softened. "Evie, we believe she killed your son for the insurance money and tried to kill her child to secure it. We've issued a warrant, but she's vanished. No bank activity, no phone, no passport trail." I stared at the papers, every word a nail sealing a coffin that hadn't finished closing. "So what happens to the baby now?" I asked finally. "He stays in the hospital under state care until the court decides," Nia said. "But as his grandmother, you can file for emergency guardianship. It'll be an uphill process, but it's possible." "Then that's what I'm doing," I said. "Whatever it takes." Kendra looked at me, her eyes soft but fierce. "Good, because we're going to need your strength for him and to bring Tiana in." I nodded. "You'll find her." And as I turned toward the nursery door, I promised myself out loud, "She may have taken my son, but she won't take my grandson." Inside the NICU, the lights dimmed to dusk glow. Caleb's chest rose steady now, soft and rhythmic. I reached in, touched his fingers again, and whispered, "Your daddy didn't die for nothing, baby. Grandma's here now. I got you." The weeks that followed became a blur of forms, inspections, and relentless determination. I woke up every morning before sunrise, put on my best church clothes, and drove from one government office to another like a woman on a mission. I was fingerprinted, questioned, poked, and prodded by people half my age who kept saying things like, "It's just procedure, Ms. Ellison." I bit my tongue through every test, every interview. The medical exam came first, blood work, heart rate, vision, reflexes. "Fit for her age," the nurse wrote on the chart. That phrase carried more weight than I expected. Then came the psychological evaluation, 3 hours of questions from a woman who looked barely old enough to rent a car. "How do you handle stress?" she asked. "Do you ever feel anger toward your daughter-in-law?" I looked her dead in the eye. "Not anger," I said. "Clarity. I know what she did, and I know what I have to do." Next was the home inspection. 2 social workers walked through every inch of my little house with flashlights like they were hunting ghosts. They opened my cabinets, measured the height of my windows, and even counted the smoke detectors. "You'll need a safety gate, outlet covers, and a crib that meets current standards," one of them said, scribbling notes. I spent my savings on everything they asked for: crib, changing table, baby monitor, safety locks. I didn't care about the cost. Caleb deserved a safe home. When all that was done, I had to complete a 40-hour childcare course. 15 young mothers and 1 grandmother, me. They smiled politely, maybe even pitied me. The instructor, a bright-eyed 20-something named Maya, spoke like she was teaching a room full of toddlers. "Remember," she said, "babies cry to communicate. Don't take it personally." I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time, but I kept quiet, took notes, and passed the final test with flying colors. 6 weeks after the lake, Nia came to see me at the hospital with a soft smile. "Ms. Ellison, the judge has reviewed your application. If all goes well, you'll have temporary custody in 2 weeks." 2 weeks. I could finally bring my grandson home. That same night, my phone rang again. It was Detective Holt. "Evie," she said, "we found something in Jamal's case that you need to see. Can you come to the station in the morning?" At the precinct, she led me to a small interrogation room where a cardboard box sat on the table. Inside were Jamal's belongings: wallet, watch, phone, and a few personal items that had been returned to me after his death. Kendra explained, "We finally managed to unlock his phone. Our tech team found messages between Jamal and Tiana." My stomach twisted as she slid the printed screenshots toward me. "Jamal, I know about the baby. We need to talk." "Tiana, I don't know what you're talking about." "Jamal, I found the pregnancy test." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tiana, I wasn't ready." The messages went on, each one worse than the last. "Jamal, I'll support you. We'll raise the baby together." "Tiana, I don't want it. I'm not ready to be a mother." "Jamal, then I'll raise him myself. Don't do anything reckless." "Tiana, you'll regret this." The last message from Jamal came the night before he died. "Jamal, if you try to end this pregnancy, I'll go to court. You won't hurt my child." Kendra's voice broke through my thoughts. "She threatened him, Evie." The mechanic confessed. She paid him $2,000 to tamper with the brakes. "He's in custody, cooperating with us." My body went cold. "She killed my son," I whispered. "And she almost killed her own baby," Kendra added. "But we'll find her. You have my word." Back home, I opened the small wooden box where I kept Jamal's things. At the bottom, beneath his graduation tassel and a folded church program from his funeral, I found something I'd never noticed before: a brown leather journal. I opened it with shaking hands. The first few pages were everyday notes about work and friends. Then came the entries about Tiana. "Met someone new today. Her name's Tiana. Beautiful, sharp, mysterious. But there's something she's not telling me. Sometimes I feel like I don't really know her. She never talks about her past. Always changes the subject. She's pregnant. I found the test. She said I ruined her life. I changed my will today. Everything goes to the baby. I don't trust her with money." The last entry was dated the day before the crash. "Tiana threatened me today. Said I'd regret everything. I'm scared, but I'll talk to Mom tomorrow. She'll know what to do." My knees gave out. He wanted to tell me. He'd known something was wrong. 3 days later, Detective Holt called again. "Evie, we've traced a burner phone used in Tiana's name. No location yet, but she's alive. We're working with federal authorities. Alive. Somewhere out there, she was breathing the same air as me." That night, while I was feeding Caleb in the hospital nursery, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Evie!" The voice was sharp, familiar, and cold. "Tiana! Before you hang up," she said, "I have something you want, and you have something I want." My heart pounded. "You've got nothing I want." "I have the truth," she said. "The truth about Jamal. I already know you killed him." A dry laugh came through the line. "You think you know everything, but you don't. Meet me at the old mill by Sable Lake tomorrow at midnight. Bring the baby and the insurance money Jamal left behind. No cops. If I see one, I'll disappear, and you'll never hear from me again. Why should I trust you?" "You don't," she said. "But you don't have a choice. The line went dead. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I called Detective Holt immediately. She called me, I said, voice trembling. I recorded it. Perfect, Kendra said. That's what we needed. We'll set a trap. You'll meet her, but we'll be there hidden. You won't be alone this time. What if something goes wrong? It won't, she promised. We'll have snipers, surveillance, the works. You'll wear a wire. We're ending this. The next night felt endless. I barely blinked. I watched Caleb sleep, memorizing every breath, every sigh just in case. You're going to be safe soon, I whispered, brushing a kiss over his soft curls. I promise, baby. At 11 p.m., I met Detective Holt and her team. They wired me with a tiny microphone the size of a shirt button. 3 taps on this switch, Kendra said. That's your panic signal. We'll move in immediately. Got it. She squeezed my hand. You're not alone in there, Evie. By 11:45, we were parked near the old mill by Sable Lake, the same cursed place where it had all begun. The moon hung pale and merciless above the broken roof. At 11:59, a text buzzed on my phone. Come in. Alone. I swallowed hard, stepped out of the car, and walked toward the dark doorway. Each step felt heavier than the last. Inside, the air smelled of rust and wet wood. My voice cracked as I called out, Tiana. From the shadows, she stepped forward, hood pulled up, hair cut short and dyed blonde. Her eyes gleamed with something wild. You came, she said. I came for answers, I said. Why did you do it? Why kill Jamal? Why try to drown your own child? Her laugh was sharp, empty. Because money talks louder than love. You married him for money. Of course I did, she said. He had a good job, good savings, and a fat insurance policy. I planned to divorce him in 5 years, take half. Then I got pregnant. He changed his will, everything for the baby. So I adapted. He had to die, and so did the baby. You're sick, I whispered. No, I'm practical. She pulled a gun from her jacket pocket, small and black. Now, tell me where my son is. I pressed the panic button once, twice, 3 times. You're never going to touch him again, I said. She sneered. Then I guess you'll die protecting him. A flash. A deafening crack. Heat seared through my shoulder and I fell back. Then chaos. Shouts, lights, boots slamming concrete. Police. Drop the weapon. Tiana froze, gun shaking in her hands. For a second, I thought she'd shoot again, but her will broke. She dropped the gun. Officers swarmed her, cuffing her to the ground. Detective Holt was at my side in seconds. Evie, stay with me. I'm okay, I gasped, clutching my shoulder. Did you get her? Kendra smiled grimly. Yeah, we got her. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift. It was over. The next thing I remember is waking up in a white hospital room, my left arm strapped in a sling and my throat raw from shouting. For a moment, the world was a blur, machines humming, sunlight spilling through half-closed blinds, and the faint sound of someone humming nearby. Morning, warrior, Patrice said with a smile as she stepped in, carrying a tray of soup. You scared us half to death. Did they get her? I whispered. They did, she said, her tone equal parts relief and exhaustion. She's in custody. No bail. Confessed to everything once the district attorney showed her the recording. I let out a shaky breath I didn't know I'd been holding. And Caleb! Patrice's smile softened. He's perfect. Strong lungs, strong heartbeat. He's been in the nursery all morning waiting on you. Tears welled up before I could stop them. Can I see him? She grinned. Wouldn't dare stop you. A nurse rolled in a small bassinet. Inside, Caleb blinked up at me, his tiny fist waving like he knew the sound of my heartbeat. My good arm trembled as I reached for him. Patrice lifted him gently into my arms. He's warm now, she said. All that cold from the lake is long gone. I pressed my cheek to his and whispered, You made it, little one. You made it. 2 weeks later, I stood in a courtroom that smelled faintly of old wood and disinfectant. On one side, Tiana Harper sat in an orange jumpsuit, wrists chained, her face blank but her eyes full of venom. On the other side, I stood with my sling still stiff, holding Mia's hand like an anchor. Judge Eleanor Briggs, a silver-haired woman with the kind of presence that could quiet thunder, looked over her glasses. "Ms. Ellison," she said, "the court has reviewed your petition for temporary guardianship of Caleb Jamal Ellison. Given the circumstances and your demonstrated commitment to his welfare, the court grants full custody pending adoption proceedings." My knees nearly gave out. Mia squeezed my hand. "Congratulations, Grandma," she whispered. Then the judge turned to Tiana. "As for you, Ms. Harper, you are charged with premeditated murder, attempted murder, and insurance fraud. Bail is denied. May God have mercy on you." Tiana's eyes found mine as they led her away. For the first time, I saw fear there. Not anger, not defiance, but fear. I didn't hate her anymore. I pitied her. The months that followed were quiet, healing ones. Caleb came home to the little cedar house on Sable Lake, the same porch where I'd watched his mother commit the unthinkable. But now, the sound of his laughter filled every empty room. The community rallied behind us. Pastor Reggie baptized him at the same church where we'd once held Jamal's funeral. Patrice became his godmother. Mia stopped by often, pretending it was for routine welfare checks, but really just to play peekaboo and drop off diapers. I took a part-time job at the church daycare, not for money but for joy. Watching children giggle and crawl reminded me that life finds its way back even through the cracks. Detective Holt called every few weeks to update me. "Tiana pled guilty," she told me one afternoon. "No trial. Life without parole." "Justice," I said quietly. "Closure," she replied. "Maybe both." On Caleb's first birthday, the house was full. Neighbors, church members, even a few nurses from the hospital. Balloons in shades of blue floated above the table. I set his tiny hand on the single candle and helped him blow it out. The room erupted in applause. Later, when the guests were gone and the house had gone soft with evening, I sat on the porch with him in my lap. Fireflies flickered over the lake. He leaned against my chest, half asleep, his breathing a soft rhythm against my heart. I looked up at the darkening sky and whispered, "We made it, Jamal. He's safe." A breeze rolled through the pecan trees, cool and gentle, and I could almost hear Jamal's voice in it, steady, proud, at peace. Months passed. The adoption became official. The judge signed the papers, and my name, Evelyn Ellison, was written beside his as guardian and mother. I framed the document and placed it on the mantel beside Jamal's picture. That night, I sat in the same chair where this nightmare had begun, Caleb asleep in his crib beside me. The old clock ticked softly in the background, its hand steady again. I thought about everything we'd survived, the lake, the lies, the loss, and realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes family isn't saved by miracles, but by ordinary people refusing to give up. I leaned down and kissed Caleb's forehead. "You'll grow up knowing love," I whispered, "and you'll never have to wonder who's in your corner." Outside, the moonlight danced over Sable Lake, once a place of death, now a mirror of rebirth. And for the first time in a long time, I slept without fear.